Hey guys, so I'm outside today for our story because it's such pretty weather out, and so if it's pretty weather out whenever you're watching this video, maybe you can go outside to do your writing activity after so you can enjoy some of the nice weather. But we're going to be reading the book Tadpole to Frog by Camilla de la Badore, and it's published by Steve Evans. And in this book there's some vocabulary words that are kind of hard, so I'm going to go over them so that way when you hear them in the book, you will know what they mean. So one of the words in our story is called froglet. And a froglet is when a tadpole keeps on growing, it turns into a froglet. So it's not a frog yet, but it's not a tadpole. So it's like that little stage in between. And so it's whenever the tadpole starts to get its legs out. That's when it's a froglet. This is the word yolk. Yolk is the part of the egg that feeds the tadpole. So it's the part inside the egg what the tadpole eats while it's growing in the egg. Then this is the word tadpole, and tadpole is when the young frog comes out of the egg, it's a tadpole and it's swimming in the water. This is the word frog spawn, and a frog spawn is the clump of the eggs for the frog, and they all stick together in the water, and they're called a frog spawn. Then this is the word hibernate. I don't think this word is supposed to be in here, but we'll go over it anyways. Okay. Hibernate is when you spend the cold months of the winter in a deep sleep, like a bear hibernates. This is the word camouflage. Camouflage is, we kind of learned about this when we talked about our caterpillars, but camouflage is whenever their skin changes color to help them hide in the places that they live. That's camouflage. This is the word amphibian, so that's kind of a tricky word to say. You can try and say it, amphibian. And an amphibian is an animal that spends the first part of its life in the water and the second part of its life mostly on land. So a frog is an amphibian because it goes in the water and on the land. And then this is the word life cycle. We learned about this whenever we learned about butterflies, but life cycle, and when we learned about plants. But a life cycle is when something that's living is born, and then it grows up, and then it dies and starts new life, and it keeps going in a cycle. And that's all of our vocabulary words, so we'll get ready to read our story now. Alright guys, so now we're ready to read our book, Tadpole to Frog. So it says, what is a frog? A frog is an amphibian. It spends part of its life living in the water and part of its life on land. Amphibians lay their eggs in water. They live in wet places, often near ponds or lakes. Common frogs have smooth, damp skin and golden eyes. So this is a common frog. Some frogs live in wet rainforests. They are called tree frogs. Most tree frogs are much smaller than frogs that live on the ground. So this is a tree frog, and it says this tree frog's big red eyes and orange feet scare other animals away. So there's common frogs, and then there's tree frogs. The story of a frog. A young frog is called a tadpole. It looks quite different from a frog. This small animal begins its life as an egg. The amazing story of how it becomes an adult frog is called its life cycle. So it goes from egg to tadpole to frog. A frog goes through 3 stages in its life cycle. It spends all of the first 2 stages in the water. So the egg and the tadpole stages are all in the water. Frog spawn. In spring, male and female frogs come together to mate. They always mate in water. A male grasps the female tightly. As the female lays her eggs, the male covers them with a liquid. The liquid fertilizes the eggs. Only fertilized eggs grow into tadpoles. The eggs are as soft as jello. They stick together in a big clump called frog spawn. The frog spawn swells up and floats to the top of the water. Inside the eggs. Once the eggs are laid, the adult frogs swim away. Inside each egg, a new tadpole is growing. The tadpole feeds on a small yolk in the egg and grows bigger. A female frog may lay hundreds of eggs at a time. Many of the eggs are eaten by fish and other pond animals, but some survive, and their tadpoles keep growing. After a few weeks, the eggs hatch. They hatch sooner in warm weather than they do in cold weather. So inside the eggs, the tadpoles are growing, and some of them get eaten and they don't get to hatch. Tiny tadpoles. Tadpoles are tiny when they hatch, but they quickly grow. Each tadpole has a long tail, which it uses to swim. It has feathery gills on either side of its head. These allow the young tadpole to breathe underwater. To begin with, tadpoles just eat small green water plants. Later, they will also eat pond animals such as water fleas. Tadpoles feed and grow. They grow faster when they live in warm water with plenty of food. So it's showing the parts of the tadpole, the tail, and then this part is the gills, so it can breathe underwater. The big change. When they are about 7 weeks old, tadpoles begin to change into frogs. First, they grow back legs. A few weeks later, their gills disappear. They swim to the surface of the water to breathe air. The tadpole's back legs grow first. Then its front legs begin to grow. As its legs grow longer, the tail grows shorter. Their tails begin to shrink and their front legs begin to grow. The tadpole now looks like a tiny frog. By the time it is 12 weeks old, the tiny frog is about 1 inch long. So this is what it'll look like when its legs start to grow and its tail starts to go away. Froglets. The little frogs keep growing and their tails disappear. They are now called froglets. The froglets stay in or near the water. They feed on small insects which they catch with their long sticky tongues. Froglets can swim, crawl, hop, and climb onto the floating leaves of lilies. When they are bigger, the froglets move away from their pond. They find a safe place under some plants where they can hide. This froglet is hiding in a pitcher plant in a wood. So there he's hiding in there. The life of a frog. Adult frogs spend most of their time on land. They hide from animals that hunt them for food. Frogs rest during the day. In the evening, they hunt for insects, slugs, and worms. Frogs can make huge leaps to catch food with their long tongues. That's pointing to his long tongue. He's trying to catch a bug. Many frogs have green, gray, or brown skin. They blend in with their surroundings, and so they are hard to see. This is called camouflage. Camouflage helps a frog to hide from animals that want to eat it. So he's in there, camouflage in the sticks. Back to the pond. Frogs hibernate in winter. This is because there is little food to eat and the weather is cold. When animals hibernate, they fall into a deep sleep to save energy. Frogs hibernate under rocks, in burrows, or in ponds. So they do hibernate. They sleep all winter long. In spring, frogs return to the pond where they were born. This is where the adult frogs mate. Soon the story of the life cycle will begin again. Male frogs croak loudly to call the female mate, so they get a big bubble in their throat. Frogs are ready to mate when they are 2 or 3 years old. And that's the end.